6th June 2021, the Indian Express opinion titled No More Lies, Please by Tavleen Singh. It is time that the Prime Minister realized that when his ministers tell barefaced lies, they reduce his personal credibility. The latest whopper came from his closest confidant, Amit Shah. When there is a domestic emergency, accountability lies with the Home Minister. Yet, he was not seen or heard during the worst days of COVID's catastrophic second wave. He surfaced last week to declare that we controlled the second wave in a very short time and that India has set a record in the world for fastest vaccination. Does he know that out of 100 Indians, only 15 are vaccinated compared to 88 in the US and 96 in the UK? The whole world saw that our public health services crumbled under the fury of the second wave, and that our vaccine policy has been such a disaster that the Supreme Court has described it as arbitrary and irrational. The Delhi High Court went further and said, I quote unquote, some people need to be charged with manslaughter. When it comes to shameless lies, the master is the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh. He says his state is now a COVID-safe zone. Has he noticed the thousands of bodies that continue to be buried in shallow graves on the banks of the Ganga? Has he noticed the number of people dying in villages of fever and breathlessness without ever being tested for COVID? Has he noticed that his officials conceal COVID deaths by handing people death certificates that simply state that they died of pneumonia or heart attack? The most tragic irony of all is that senior ministers in the government of India seem now to believe their own lies. So they appear routinely on television to declare that it is state governments who are to blame for the grim shortage of vaccines. One senior minister in an interview last week blamed state governments for first demanding the right to buy vaccines on the open market and then complaining that it was the job of the central government to procure vaccines. They ignored the fact that it was because the government of India failed to procure enough vaccines that chief ministers were forced to try and procure them from foreign companies. When they discovered that the big pharma companies were willing only to deal with the central government, they came together to appeal to the Prime Minister to take charge of procurement. So far, nothing has happened. The same officials who got us into this mess remain in charge. And the Prime Minister shows no sign that he has understood that the way forward is to make a new team, with all the chief ministers on board. The crisis is so huge that instead of chatting to students last week, Modi should have been setting up a new crisis management committee. Instead of leading from the front, he continues to allow members of his failed vaccination task force to pop up daily on our screens to declare that vaccine procurement is being so miraculously ramped up that we should have more than 216 crore doses before this year ends. Experts agree that for India to overcome the damage caused by this second wave and be ready for a third, we need to start vaccinating between 7 and 10 million people a day. How is this going to happen when vaccination centers in cities like Delhi and Mumbai are closing because there are no vaccines? So what we need to know urgently is how many vaccines have already been procured and how many will be procured in the next few weeks and from where. If the Prime Minister needs to personally tweet his thanks to the American government for a measly 25 million doses, we must be in deeper trouble than we thought. In rural India, the problems are truly daunting. If there is to be a massive vaccination drive, the first thing that needs to happen is that defunct primary healthcare centers and village hospitals must be revived urgently and manned with trained doctors and nurses. In Bihar and UP, they are mostly crumbling sheds with stray animals wandering in them. Then there is a problem of vaccine hesitancy in even literate rural people. This hesitancy has been fanned by men like Baba Ramdev telling outrageous lies about allopathy. Why should they not believe him when he is known to be close to the Prime Minister? And when India's Health Minister personally launches his latest COVID cure by standing by his side for a promotion along with another senior minister? In a country where far too many people trust quacks, this kind of thing is both irresponsible and dangerous. India is facing a health crisis bigger than any we have seen in more than a century. And the only way to move forward is by rebuilding rural health facilities at supersonic speed. The Prime Minister needs the help of every Chief Minister to do this. When it comes to procuring vaccines, though it is solely his job, and he needs to do this with ultimate transparency. The one thing we do not need are for his most trusted lieutenants to be trying to erase the truth, because truth cannot be erased.